First of all, thank you so much for doing this interview with me, Stephen. I appreciate it. So I really wanted to have this opportunity to kind of talk to you a little bit about your testimony during your sister's trial, her criminal trial. You are the brother of Judge Tracie Hunter. Absolutely. I wanted to just, let the audience know who you are. And then, do you mind if I ask you some questions about the testimony you gave?
Oh, I don't mind. You can ask me anything.
Oh, thank you. Tell me about your relationship with your sister, Judge Tracie Hunter.
We have a very great relationship. She's always encouraged me. Even when I was in school, she's always, sent me things along the way, and she wanted me to always do the best, and be the best person that I possibly can.
Are you and your sister pretty close?
Yes. Well, actually, yes. I used to call her every night to check on her.
Okay. And so there is quite an age difference between you and your sister. How far apart are you?
About 9 years.
9 years.
And so she moved out when I was younger, but I got to see her go through college and graduate and go to law school and go through some trials and different things like that, such as a car accident. But, she's a very strong woman, a Christian woman, and, has a lot of great, morals and things like that. So, we have a pretty good relationship. She's actually a walking miracle. She had an accident. So she's very strong. And I watched her, and I remember being a kid and she was laying there and couldn't move, and I remember I would do anything. She told me, just give me a cup of water, just run and go get a cup of water,
So how old was she when she had the accident?
I believe the year was 1987.
And how old was she in 87?
Probably about maybe 19 or 20.
About 20. And
I had to have been about 9 or 10.
Oh, so you were a little guy.
Absolutely.
Okay, so even at the point where she left home, you were still kind of small.
Oh, yes.
Got it.
She only came home for 1 year after the accident.
Okay. Were you hired by your sister?
Oh, no. I was hired there in 2007. And I believe I left, it was in 2011, and I came back 6 months later.
Okay, so why'd you leave?
I was planning on getting away from that job. I wanted to go and move to another city, and then my dad had a massive heart attack, so I decided to go back down there and work again, pick the job back up. Okay. Whether I told them that or not, I know that I didn't want to stay there. I kind of would have felt like, I don't want to say this, but if I was still working there, I would probably think that I failed in life. and that's just...
You felt like the job was a remedial kind of a job and you wanted to be doing more.
Absolutely.
Oh, got it. Okay. And were you trying to keep your job? Was your sister trying to help you keep your job?
Oh, no, she never got involved. Actually, she told me to leave that place long way before. Told me to get out of there. And
why did your sister want you to leave your job?
Well, she always suggested, why don't you just go back to school, or something like that. Actually, when I got into my disciplinary hearing, my lawyer told them that I would not return back to that job. So there was no reason for her to try to save it because I no longer wanted to work there. I was working 2 jobs and I made more, which was my primary job. And at the same time, my dad was in a hospital and he was at the last stages of his life. So I wanted to be there in the evening time, with him.
So you weren't trying to keep your job at all?
Oh, no. We went in there and my lawyer just told him he's not coming back. We just wanted to clear my name. So
your whole objective in this disciplinary hearing, your objective was to simply clear your name.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you were not trying to save your job.
Oh, no.
And your sister was also not interested in saving your job.
No.
Now, you do know that that's the whole entire narrative around this whole thing,
right.
that your sister was trying to help you save your job.
No.
So the media shows clips of you pointing to your sister during trial.
Mm-hmm.
What was happening then that required you to point to her?
I believe it was Judge Nato that asked me to identify your sister, and I looked back and I pointed, and then, it was just like crazy because when I left court that day, I went to the library like I always do. When I got ready to log on the computer, and I looked over to a lady, how you glance? I looked over to the lady's computer next to me, and there was a big picture of me pointing. She had on her headsets and was looking forward, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. They made it look like, I was pointing her out or anything, but no, it wasn't anything like that. I was just trying to identify just like they told me to.
So were the media reports a true representation of what happened in the courtroom the day you testified?
It was completely false. So I believe it might have been a Channel 9 where they said he dropped the bombshell or something on his sister. That was completely false.
A bombshell today in the trial of Judge Tracie Hunter. Today, jurors heard damaging testimony against the judge, and it came from her own brother. 9 on Your Side reporter Shannon Kettler joins us now with what he had to say. Shannon?
Well, some of those charges that Tracie Hunter is facing is using her position as a judge to help her brother. Stephen Hunter was a former employee of the Hamilton County Juvenile Jail. Last year, he was fired from his job for punching a juvenile inmate. According to prosecution witnesses, Judge Hunter requested documents, including medical information of that inmate involved.
So, during your sister's trial, do you recall being asked whether Judge Hunter gave you confidential documents or anything relative to your disciplinary hearing?
No, they never asked me about anything confidential or anything towards the disciplinary hearing. I heard other sources too saying it was medical and mental records and different things like that, which was completely false. She never gave me anything like that. I never even told her that I was in a situation. I wasn't the type of kid like, let me run and go get big brother or big sister.
Okay, so in court, when they question you on the witness stand, when they ask you about medical records and confidential documents, what was your response?
They never asked me about medical records, and they never said anything about anything being confidential. There would be no reason for her to give me that because I was the one that prepared the documents in juvenile court for the inmate. When the kid arrived, the police gave me the medical records, which is proper protocol, and I did the mental evaluation on that kid, and I also pulled the kid's file.
You completed the intake for all of the juveniles that came through the juvenile system through 2020. Is that where you were?
Absolutely. I started the process. I worked at intake whenever I was there, and I did the intake process for the children. Whether I dealt with medical records, processed them in, do their mental evaluation. I pulled their files. So there was nothing that she needed to give me. No judge or anyone could have had that information unless I processed it in for them. So I was actually the first one in juvenile court to touch any of that stuff. I can assure you that the special prosecutors knew that. I promise you 100%. They knew that.
Now, Tracie Hunter's attorney did not ask any questions of Stephen during cross-examination. He was only on the stand for about 3 minutes. But again, the most damaging testimony so far against Hunter in this trial.
Did Judge Hunter's attorney cross-examine you at all?
That's the mystery behind it because they spend days over the news talking about me. I also believe they talk, days in the courtroom talking about me. But when I get up there, it's like they don't want me talking. And I'm like, what's the mystery behind that? Clyde Bennett, for whatever reason, didn't question me. I was puzzled by that.
Did you receive confidential documents from your sister that could have helped you keep your job during your termination hearings?
No, not at all.
So did the state's attorneys ever ask you to identify any documents you received from Judge Hunter?
No, they never asked me. I felt like it wasn't explained the way it should have been. And I think that it was used to deceive the public at the same time. It's not about what I said. It's the fact that they lied about what I said, the prosecutors, knowing that they knew the truth behind what I was actually saying.
I personally do not believe she's guilty of any felonies. I was here the day that there was no evidence actually presented for her providing medical files to her brother, and yet that was the one she was convicted on. So I was a little surprised about that because there wasn't actually evidence presented.
So folks have been sending me information, and I've been reading stories, and this has been going on for 5 years. Now, what is this confidential document she was accused of mishandling, and how does that result in a jail sentence?
Yeah, There is no document. They never introduced a single document into evidence, and it is a miscarriage of justice. She did not commit any crime, and the crime that they accused her of committing was handing a document to her brother who was being fired. That didn't happen. She didn't commit a crime, and she has been appealing this for 5 years. She did nothing at all, and she got thrown in jail today for 6 months. It's an outrage.
So let's take folks back. When she won, it was a very controversial race that she won, and there were those who were angry that she actually prevailed in that election, correct?
Yeah, you can say everybody was angry. In 2010, she ran in a Democratic primary for Hamilton County Juvenile Court judge. The Democrats did not endorse her. They opposed her. She won the primary. She ran in the general election. She ran against the Republican judge. And in that race, there were several hundred votes that never got counted. And she called me 10 days after the election in November of 2010, and I've been representing her ever since. We were able to go to court. It took a year and a half, but eventually the federal court said, count those votes. And when they were counted, it turned out that she had won by 74 votes. It's a reminder that every vote counts, and you got to count them all. She got on the bench in May of 2012 and changed things in Hamilton County Juvenile Court. She wouldn't let children be shackled in her courtroom. She used her discretion to say that juveniles should not be charged as adults. And she made changes in evening the playing field for children so that they would get evidence before trial, what we call discovery. She made a lot of changes, and she made a lot of people mad. And I think that's why she ended up in jail today.
And so she fought this thing for 5 years. First of all, how has this impacted her life, her career? With also going to jail, how's this impacted her life moving forward?
Well, when she was convicted in October of 2014, at that point, the Supreme Court of Ohio took away her law license. She's not been able to be a lawyer. She's not been able to make a living since before she was indicted. And she has not been able to have any peace the last 5 years because since her conviction, we were able to go to the appeals court. We lost. We went to the Supreme Court. We lost. We went to federal court. And at that point, we won. And we had a habeas case pending. And every day that case was pending for the last 3 years, she woke up every morning not knowing if today was the day there would be a decision. And today was the day she'd lose and have to go to jail. It's been devastating to live a life like that, especially when you didn't commit crime.
So here's what I want to say.
Sure, you go ahead.
I do think that Tracie's fighting to secure the election that she had won was a big destabilization to the establishment. I do think that was not understood by most of our city, what a destabilizing that was. And I think those who hold the positions of power in our society, in our county, in the judicial system, perhaps maybe in the actual political parties, for them it was politics, I think. For her, it was about there being African American representation in the judge's bench for the young people of our city who come before the juvenile court. And in particular, the fact that our arrest rate and our prosecution rate and our incarceration rate is so highly disproportionate for young people of color than it is for people with lighter skin like me. And it's a high number. It's like 7 or 8 to 1, I think I saw on the Hamilton County Juvenile Court website. African Americans to Caucasians. And I don't think that's out of personal racism. I think it's out of the momentum of history. I think it's out of unconscious bias. I think it's out of racial fear. I think as a person who myself, not having an African American friend until I was 28 years old, a life friend, I didn't understand, and I still have a lot to learn about the racial experience, the life experiences of African Americans in our city and our nation. And so I don't see through their lens what they sometimes see and tell me about, but if I allow myself to at least suspend my worldview for a time and consider, is there truth to what they're saying, the way they experience life here. I've always interpreted that what they were saying is that I and other white people had personal hatred and racism against them. And that's not what they're saying. They're saying our experience in America is so different from yours, and we know it's because of our skin color, but we can't put our finger on why is this happening. All of that often just is labeled in a broad stroke way as racism. But I think it comes down to more difficult things to understand, like racial fear, racial ignorance, different worldviews. And racial fear, I think...
What has that got to do with this case?
I think racial fear and racial protecting the status quo is what Tracie upset. And I think that is something we need to, as a society in Cincinnati, Hamilton County, and nationally, we need to have many more conversations about. So it is hard for us to see how this particular case has anything to do with that, as we look at different specifics. But in the grand picture of things, it's part of a narrative that's profoundly been affected by her being elected. And then I think strength withdrawn from her in order for her to succeed at what she was elected to do. I do not believe she's guilty of crimes. And that's what I just wanted to come and say and speak my heart to. So thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come in.
Yes, sir.
Completely false.
You know, it was interesting. One of the things that I realized about during the hearing is that Channel 9 actually was one of the outlets that sued your sister.
In 2010, I ran for judge of the juvenile court because the juvenile system was broken.
Corrupt.
As a lawyer who practiced in the juvenile court, I saw the miscarriages of justice and the disparities that criminalize Black and poor children, leading to the school to prison pipeline. I knew that poverty and a failing educational system, compounded by early contacts with the system, were disproportionately harming Black children. I knew that if the children that entered the system would ever have a chance to succeed, they needed to be rehabilitated and educated.
Amen. Like the law says. Like the law says. Rehabilitate them.
After a nearly 2-year battle to get valid votes counted, I was finally sworn in on May 25th, 2012, 18 months after my official term started. Immediately, I began rehabilitating the children and ensuring fairness, justice, and equality for all those who entered my courtroom. In April 2013, I became the first judge in Ohio to ban the routine shackling of juveniles in my courtroom. The Ohio Supreme Court followed my lead and banned shackling across Ohio 3 years after me.
Yes! Yes!
In 2016, I ordered prosecutors to turn over police reports and critical evidence in my court rulings as judge. My cases, which were eventually upheld by the Ohio Supreme Court while I was on trial, became the new law in Ohio.
Yay! A law from a judge.
You won't report that. Now the state must turn over critical evidence in juvenile court cases. I discovered that the juvenile court had been falsifying case statistics for years, and my exposure led to the complete overhaul of the juvenile court case management system to ensure accuracy in case reporting.
That's right.
I ordered competency and psychological tests for children when their attorneys failed to do so. I crafted dispositions that emphasize education and rehabilitation over incarceration.
Yes.
By rehabilitating children, I reduced the recidivism rate and successfully helped integrate children into society.
Yes.
I hired African Americans in key positions like magistrates and directors of the court. While I was being called crazy and incompetent by Joe Dieters.
Yeah.
All those who opposed my election, I was changing laws that make the criminal justice system better. That's right. For future generations of families and children of every race and socioeconomic class. While I was focused on reunifying families and rehabilitating juveniles, I was sued for protecting children in the media.
A legal rebuke for Hamilton County Juvenile Judge Tracie Hunter in a dispute with 9 on Your Side. It involved the August 2012 cases of 6 juveniles who beat and badly injured a North College Hill man.
All of whom, according to 9 News reporter Scott Wegener, are children.
Man, I didn't know the guy was only like 12 and 13. It was just crazy.
At issue is access to Judge Tracie Hunter's courtroom. In September 2012, 9 on Your Side applied to cover the North College Hill case. Judge Hunter allowed the coverage but imposed restrictions on naming the defendants, videotaping them above the waist, showing their parents in court, and taking any video of the lawyers without their permission.
So what we're here to talk about today, not only is the hate crime hypocrisy, but the epidemic of black on white crime in this country. Those are the 2 things we're here to talk about today. We're not here to scream names at anyone. We're obviously not dressed in uniform. I'm here to say quite a bit, sir. I've got 2 hours. The fact is that white individuals are
White nation under God. We can't get along if we ain't white nation under God.
a media in this country that call us supremacists when they say that they call me a racist, they call me a supremacist. Yeah, that's what they call me. I hear black leaders being called civil rights leaders.
Yeah, I just feel like if good people do nothing, then ignorance like this flourishes. And I've always lived in integrated neighborhoods. I love my neighbors of all colors, and I just think that this kind of thing in 2012 is beyond ridiculous. But I also think it's kind of a trend that the country's going in this hatred mode, and I'm really tired of it, and I just wanted to show my support. I think what happened to the man the other day was horrible, but from all accounts I've heard, there was no racial bent to it. It was stupid kids doing illegal activity, and I think nothing ever condones this kind of hatred.
It's also been very interesting to me that no one's ever brought out the fact that Channel 9 also had a reporter on your sister's jury.
Wow.
They also had. Were you aware of that?
I heard that that they had detectives. I mean, not detectives, but the lawyers' wives.
Yes, the lawyer. Yes, there was a lawyer in the jury pool.
Wow.
That was from Channel 9. One of the lawyers' wives was also on your sister's jury. She was the jury foreperson.
Wow.
And in fact, not only was she the jury foreperson, she was a jury foreperson who she actually lied on her questionnaire. And in fact, we found video footage during the trial that says she hated pastors and that sort of thing. So that was interesting to me that they were able to actually sit on her jury.
Wow.
But
that needs to be investigated.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Bishop Bobby Hilton, and we think that this motion today is very important because that was a jury foreperson who apparently did not tell the truth as they were going through who would sit on that jury, and to find out that she was misused sexually as a young lady, and even said that this would have an effect upon her, and misused by a minister. This would have an effect on the rest of her life. Then it's a problem when a person like that sits on the jury. And we're finding out these things that not only was she abused and have a problem with ministers, but she's the wife of an attorney that works for the law firm that sued Judge Hunter. There's another person on the jury that works for the television station that sued Judge Hunter. There were other folk on the jury that said before the trial started, they had made up their mind against Judge Hunter. We're not asking for special treatment, but we're asking for fair treatment. And we don't seem to have had fair treatment in the trial of Judge Tracie Hunter.
So with the jury forewoman, you believe this is potentially she had animus against ministers that impacted how she viewed Judge Hunter, even as a woman?
Absolutely, and those are according to her words. We have her documents. that she had a problem with ministers, she had a problem with church because of what happened to her.
You're aware that Judge Hunter is a minister.
I am, but she's a woman, so I would think maybe it would be a problem with male ministers rather than female ministers.
Well, the jury foreperson never said that it was a problem with just male ministers. She had a problem with church. She has a problem with praying, and that tends not to have an issue with male or female if you have a problem even having your children to pray at night.
So why have you never come forward to clear up the rumors that your sister gave you confidential documents?
Well, nobody's ever asked me. I think everybody, everybody knew, and
when you say everybody knew, what do you mean? Because I think most people in the public don't know.
No, the public didn't know, but I think that everybody knew that this was just a lot of trumped up garbage.
Although I had the largest caseload of any juvenile judge in the state of Ohio, over 14,000 cases, I was accused of not ruling timely and sued repeatedly, while my counterpart, John Williams, who actually had more cases lagging than me, was never sued.
Speak the truth.
Peters, despite his admitted conflict of interest, insisted on representing me as my lawyer, even though he had a glaring admitted conflict, and the election lawsuit was still ongoing at the time he began representing me. He was both suing me and representing me at the same time.
Injustice!
Where does that happen? Conflict of interest. When I was denied independent counsel and forced to let him represent me, he intentionally failed to answer 13 lawsuits filed against me as judge. When he refused to file appeals in those cases, I was forced to defend the juvenile court, which was hurt by his office's negligence. I then filed complaints against Joe and 3 assistant prosecutors for mishandling those cases against me and in my courtroom. He retaliated 2 weeks later by accusing me of crimes and hiring his personal lawyers to indict me and charge me with crimes that they knew I never committed.
That's right.
Joe Dieters accused me of tampering with evidence, but a forensic computer expert proved they tampered with computers to frame me.
Yes.
Then they destroyed the computers.
Yes.
I was charged with 10 felonies in total, but I committed no crimes and I broke no laws. I followed the training of the Ohio Supreme Court that I received for judges. I was accused of securing a contract for a family member under 2921.42A1, which says no public official shall knowingly do any of the following: authorize or employ the authority or influence of the public official's office to secure authorization of any public contract in which the public official, a member of the public official's family, or any of the public official's business associations has an interest. I did not violate that statute, but Joe Dieters and Pat DeWine did.
Yes!
I didn't hire any family member at the juvenile court. My brother was hired years before I was elected, and he got his job based on his efforts alone, not a family connection like Dieters and DeWine.
Yes. Yes.
I went to trial and was blatantly denied justice and a fair trial. Many jurors were friends, neighbors, family members, and employees of those who falsely accused me of crimes. I was refused the right to poll my jury under Ohio Revised Code 2945.77, polling a jury. 3 jurors said guilty was not their verdict immediately following trial that same day. But Norbert Nadeau refused me the constitutional right to a fair trial, although the verdict was not unanimous, which the law requires.
I appreciate your candor and your willingness to have this conversation tonight. I noticed as well that you're wearing a Justice for Judge Tracie Hunter shirt. How did you feel when first of all, to see your sister dragged out of the courtroom and incarcerated? I can only imagine.
It was devastating. One thing that a quote that I was reading that was interesting today was the quote by Malcolm X, and it says, "If you're not careful while reading the paper, it'll have you hating the oppressed and loving the oppressor." And that was just something that really stuck to me because, not having any proof or anything and making accusations, that was just, it was just ridiculous, for her to be dragged out. And I think if we as a community allow this to happen, just keep doing it over and over again.
I agree.
I would say it's time to take a stand and take responsibility, because when you look back what happened back in the 60s, and when we look back on that now, the generation now, you got black kids saying, what they would have did. And then you got whites, got whites saying what they wouldn't have done.
Right.
But if they sit back and watch it today, they would have did the exact same thing.
Doing the same things.
And being silent about something like that. I also thought about, so to see something like this happen to a human being and not come to the aid, knowing that this is happening, I think that at the end, God is going to hold all of us responsible, whether you black or white. It's something that we're all going to be held responsible for each other. And watching what happened to Judge Hunter, I think that's a responsibility. This is our time, because people are going to, according to the word, people are going to say, well, Jesus, when did we see you and didn't feed you? When did we saw you, not being clothed? When did we not visit you in jail? He said, if you did it to the least of one of these, then you've done it to me. And to watch that happen to her and everybody say what they would have did, I would tell them to, some people say things to me in public. I'm with Judge Hunter, but it carries the same weight when they don't do anything. It's just a saying they're not for her. Even if they just gave $10 to her defense fund, or send letters, or just show up to some of the rallies and stuff. I think that's taking responsibility for the community than just posting, whether you hate me or hate her on Facebook. I would just tell the public to stand up for what is right. Stand up. Everybody talks about justice. Everybody, it doesn't matter, even if you're a Trump supporter and you claim to have moral value, follow morality first. That's for anyone across the board, and stand up for what is right. We cannot repeat the same things that happened yesterday, today. And so that, that we preserve America for greatness tomorrow.